like now ask Sophia Neff and representatives of our Girl Scouts and Brownies to come on up and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Sophia? Come on up, girls.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Next, I'd like to welcome Norwood student Sophie Armistice to perform her rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner. Sophie? Here you are. I'm going to ask you to stand again.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you very much, Sophie. Thank you. Now we may be seated. Thank you all for joining us as we observe Veterans Day. It was on the 11th hour, the 11th day, the 11th month, 1918, that the guns of World War I fell silent, ending in an armistice. And the hostilities between the Allied nations, Germany. It was also known as Armistice Day in the beginning, and years later, 1954, President Dwight D. Eisenhower amended the day to celebrate all those who have served through the generations, thus calling it Veterans Day. The military men and women who serve and protect us come from all walks of life. Their parents, grandparents, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. It is up to each of us to honor the lives that we have lost, and to honor all those who have served and continue to serve. We honor them through events like this, and we should honor them through our actions in our daily lives as well. It is up to us as parents and leaders to make sure that our children realize the immense sacrifice that our veterans have made. It is because of these brave men and women that are here in attendance today with us that we are able to enjoy so many of the freedoms that we are afforded. This ceremony serves as a small token of gratitude towards these men and women. If you're a veteran, I ask that you please stand now so we may be recognized. Ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. For the third year in a row, 8th grade students at Norwood School were asked to write a short essay. The topic, what Veterans Day means to them. These essays were judged, and we will have the top 3 essays read aloud today. I'll call the students to the stage one at a time. The first essay will be read by Sophia Donskoy. Sophia?
Freedom is not just another word. Freedom is not something anyone in the world is entitled to. Freedom is a privilege, and many of those who are lucky enough to have it take it for granted. Freedom gives us the right to speak, act, and think the way we believe is right. Freedom is the reason why I can travel the world. Freedom is the reason why I'm standing here delivering this message. I'm speaking of freedom because not everyone has it. I'm here to speak for those who aren't as lucky as I am and don't have the right to speak out. Let's start in the bitter years of the Cold War. My mother and father were born in the Soviet Union. They went to school 6 days a week, and later on, they went to the university, which was paid for by the government. Seems like a good life, right? After all, solid higher education was free. That's what socialists told them. But was everything really free? Yes, the government paid for their education, but where did the government get the money? From my parents, from the people. Everyone in the Soviet Union worked for the government. That's how they got free education. My parents worked hard, yet they were receiving a fraction of what they deserved. The rest was taken by the government. In the USSR, people weren't allowed to work for themselves, own a business, or say write a book outside the government's approval. My parents dreamt of seeing the world. See, in the Soviet Union, everything was guaranteed free, but nothing was free, and there was no freedom. Maybe you wanted to protest, you weren't allowed. You would discuss it in the bathroom with the water running. Why? In all likelihood, your apartment was wiretapped. My parents ran away from all those things. They risked their lives in search of freedom. If my parents didn't risk their lives, I wouldn't be here today. Freedom means a lot to me. It allows me to be who I am today. It allows me to have my own thoughts, regardless of how much others may disagree with me. I can read the books I choose and travel the world. I wouldn't be happy if I was getting everything for free. I'm happy to be free.
Thank you very much. It's a great job. The second essay will be read by Megan Albert. Megan?
The word freedom can mean multiple things. If you're asking me, the word freedom stands for independence. Independence is what makes us all free. Veterans are the reason that all Americans can live freely and have independence. In fact, we have an Independence Day. On July 4th, in 1776, the Continental Congress approved the Declaration of Independence. It was a revolutionary document that let all 13 colonies free from British rule. As you all know, the most common and popular way to celebrate the 4th of July is by lighting off fireworks. A different way of celebrating is thanking our veterans. Veterans Day is celebrated for one big reason. It marks the anniversary of the end of World War I. The ending of World War I is extremely important to people because it is known as the end of all wars. On Veterans Day, all Americans can honor veterans just by simply hanging a flag in front of their home. And by doing that, it is also a huge reminder that the veterans are the reason we are all able to live freely and make our own decisions. All Americans look up to veterans in all that they have done for us and our country. With everything going on in the world today, I'm so lucky to live in a country like ours, one where we can live free, vote, and have our own beliefs. This is all thanks to our veterans. So, on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, everyone should say thank you to a veteran and all that they have done for our country.
Thank you very much, Michael. Another fabulous essay. The third essay will be read by Kaylin Curtis.
A veteran is someone who fought in the war to protect us and to give us freedom. Veterans are people who dedicate their lives to be away from family, to be in uncomfortable situations, and to not have a bed to sleep in. A hero is a person who is admired or idolized for courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities. Veterans are heroes. My great-grandpa fought in World War II. He risked his life for freedom. As my mom says, no one wins in a war. I can't imagine what it's like to leave your family for years knowing that you might not come back. My great-grandpa was committed. To be committed, you have to do it for a reason. My great-grandpa wanted to serve for his country and help us get our freedom. My great-grandpa was so committed that once he was walking with the tanks and one of the tanks went over a minefield and exploded. He lost one of his fingers and was hit in the head and the back. He was taken to a hospital in a different country. Afterward, he got back in the war and kept fighting. He died a hero. Even though I never got to meet him, I still like to talk about him and what he did. Because of this, women can vote, work, and have rights. To me, freedom means to have control, to speak our minds, and to be able to go to school. I am thankful for my freedom. Most countries don't have the freedom we have. Thank you to all our veterans who risked their lives and left their families just so we could have freedom. Because of them, I can go to school and have an education. I like to honor my veterans by hanging a flag and going to memorial service. On November 11th, we should all appreciate our veterans.
Thank you very much, Kaylin. Nice round of applause. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to welcome up to the podium my friend, United States Marine Corps veteran, Joe Parado, to introduce our special guest speaker. Joe?
Thank you, Ben. I want to welcome all my fellow veterans and everybody that came today. It's a very special day. Before I start this introduction, I'd just like to recognize somebody that works in Borough Hall, a borough employee, who put together this display and this insert. She worked very hard on it. Her name's Betty Ann Berube. I'm sure if you've been in Borough Hall, you've seen her at the window there. I can't thank her enough. I don't know if she's here. She's not here. I'll ask the other fellow borough employees to thank her for us. So thank you, Betty Ann. It is my privilege and honor to introduce our guest speaker today. He is a man that has stepped up to serve his country and his community in the most positive and honorable ways. Our guest today has served his country as a member of the United States Navy, the United States Coast Guard, and served as a member of a special security force that was formed after the attack of 9/11. Along with his service to his country, he has been a pillar of the community of Fairhaven. He has been a member of the Fairhaven Fire Department for 53 years. He is a former Fairhaven Fire Chief. He served as captain of the Fairhaven First Aid Squad and holds the distinguished designation of life member in both organizations. On a personal note, 26 years ago when I joined the Fairhaven Fire Department, he was an important mentor to me, and I am honored to count him as a friend. Ladies and gentlemen, I am proud and honored to introduce today's speaker, Ben Feeney. Ben? I'll stand by.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe, very much. Joe's been a good friend and a pillar of Fairhaven, believe me. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Fairhaven's Veteran Day ceremony. And it's certainly an honor for me to be speaking here with you today. From small towns to the largest cities, people will gather today at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month to remember, to honor, and pay gratitude to those who have served our country. I would like to take a page from Fred Despensier's book. Fred's a U.S. Marine vet. Many people know him. I'd like to have all the veterans come up and do a semicircle around the doughboy, if you would do that for me. Okay, thank you. Since the first shots of the Revolutionary War, American men and women have been answering the nation's call to duty. Millions of Americans have fought and many have died on the battlefields and the oceans of the world to defend our freedom and our way of life. Today, our troops continue to make the ultimate sacrifice, and even as we lose troops, many more Americans step forward to say, I am ready to serve. They follow in the footsteps of generations of fine American patriots. Keeping that in mind, I would like to talk about the Wall of Honor for a moment. The Wall of Honor, located in Norwood School, is the idea of Joe Parada. His son Matt was serving in Afghanistan in 2011. And Joe, a Marine veteran of the 1960s, wanted a way to honor not only his son, but all the young men and women on active duty that had graduated from Norwood. With the help of the committee, Joe, Betsy Koch, Darrell Breckenridge, Katie Casora, Rick Robbins, Superintendent Sean McNeil, Mayor Ben Lucarelli, and Nicole Bryant, they got this job done. And it's very impressive. If you ever get to Norwood School, it's right in the hallway outside of the main office. Before I read the names of the graduates serving on that active duty, I would like to thank the families of those brave young men. There are no women up there at this time. When you have someone serving in the armed forces, it sometimes becomes a very lonely feeling as you experience the emotional roller coaster that is the uncertainty of the welfare of their sons and daughters as they serve in a very dangerous world. The other thing I'd like to highlight today, that in our small little town of Fairhaven, there are currently over 11 Norwood graduates serving on active duty in an era of all volunteer armed forces. This is something that all Fairhaven residents should be proud of. The Norwood graduates serving at this time: Christopher Richards, class of 2000, U.S. Navy; Joel Heideck, class of 2001, West Point graduate, U.S. Army; Kenneth Ebner, class of 2005, West Point graduate, serving in the U.S. Army; Christopher Hopper, 2006, U.S. Army; Brendan Reese, class of 2007, U.S. Army; Keegan Finn, U.S. Marine Corps, class of 2008; Brian Truax, class of 2008, U.S. Navy; Matthew Balco, class of 2010, U.S. Marines; Anthony Scametta, 2011, U.S. Army; Joe McGovern, class of 2012, U.S. Marine Corps. And I had a late entry here that Joe just gave me that they've, Alex Heil, 1990, U.S. Navy, and that brings a total of 11 men. Veteran Heil was a career Navy man. Also this fall, there will be 2 new graduates added to display at Norwood, and this will bring the amount of young men serving from Fairhaven to over 12. And they are Jamie Laughinghouse, class of 2013, U.S. Marine Corps, and Pearson Dye, class of 2013, U.S. Army. May God bless all these young men and women serving in our country and keep them safe. Today, we honor our veterans to remember their achievements and their dedication, to remember their sacrifices they have made, and the courage it takes to defend honor, duty, country. I would like to recognize the family members of the people who are serving or who have served. we know that you have lived through difficult times and often takes a heavy load to keep the home fires burning. Thank you for what you have done. It is interesting how different generations of veterans respond to being thanked for their service. Our World War II vets generally receive it politely, stoically, knowing that they had simply fulfilled their patriotic duty by fighting abroad. Korean and Vietnam War veterans, too often overlooked, seem genuinely touched when remembered. For our most recent generation of veterans who represent even a smaller percentage of the population than in previous wars, the gratitude is accepted, but many feel a sense of disconnect from their civilian peers. What is common through all generations of veterans, however, is the absolute insistence that the gratitude truly belongs not to them, but to their fallen brothers and sisters who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for the country. This leads me to believe that the best way to thank them is to honor their fallen, to take care of their wounded brothers and sisters, and to safeguard their families. Warriors are selfless creatures. They fight as a team and as a family. They look out for one another to their last dying breath. Trust me when I say there is no better way to thank a veteran than to protect their brethren. On a personal note, I always knew I would go into the Navy even when I was in grammar school. My dad, born in 1903, was too young for World War I and too old for World War II, but he worked for the Army for 40 years. My brother Bill was a Navy photographer during the Korean War, and my Uncle Frank Feeney, who was raised right down here opposite Willow Street on Fairhaven Road, along with my dad and the rest of the family. But my Uncle Frank was in the Sea Beast during World War II. My Uncle Frank died in 2002, and as executor of the estate, I was looking through some of his papers he had left and found this letter that I'd like to read to you. It's only 2 paragraphs. And it says, Dear Mr. Feeney, I have addressed this letter to you to reach all the formalities of your separation from active service when they have been completed. I have done so because without formality, as clearly as I know how to say it, I want the Navy pride in you, which is my privilege to express, to reach into your civil life and to remain with you always. You have served in the greatest Navy in the world. You crushed 2 enemy fleets at once, receiving your surrenders only 4 months apart. It brought our land-based air power within bombing range of the enemy and set our ground armies on the beachheads of final victory. It performed a multitude of tasks necessary to support these military operations. No other Navy at any time has done so much for your part in these achievements. You deserve to be proud as long as you live. The nation which you served at a time of crisis will remember you with gratitude. The best wishes of Navy go with you into your civilian life. Good luck. Sincerely, James Barstow, Secretary of the Navy. Now, I don't know if everyone got a letter like that after World War II, like the Army and the rest of them. I hope they did. But I just thought that was really a great thank you from the U.S. government. Okay. In part of my speech, I am sure that all Navy vets received that letter, but what a great thank you from the U.S. government. My uncle must have thought so. He kept it for 63 years. I knew a lot of veterans from World War II, but I was very lucky and honored to know 2 World War vets, George Elliot and Frank Olbermann. On December 7th, 1941, George Elliot was a radar operator on duty who reported many planes headed for Pearl Harbor. I worked with George at New Jersey Bell Telephone, and he told me it made no difference that his superior officers felt the planes were bombers coming from the U.S. mainland, because there was no way to alert the ships in the harbor. If they had known they were enemy airplanes, there was no way to the radar to notify the ships in the harbor. I'm sorry. The radar was new and communications had not yet been set up. Frank Olbermann, I met playing softball for the Fairhaven Fire Company. Frank was a member of Eatontown. Frank's ship, Juno, was torpedoed by a Japanese submarine, and very few men survived. 5 Sullivan brothers were among the sailors who did not make that. Frank told me The only reason he lived was because he couldn't swim very well, and some of his shipmates threw him up on a cork life raft. Frank passed away a few years ago and was the last survivor of the light cruiser Juno. What a great gentleman he was, as was George Elliot. Well, thank you for attending today. Thank you for listening to my speech. God bless you and your families. May God bless all these veterans and veterans everywhere. The Borough of Fairhaven, along with the emergency responders. And God bless the United States of America.
Thank you very much. We'll now have we'll move forward with our program. I'd like to thank the organizations that have presented us with a wreath for today's ceremony. As I read your organization's name, please send a representative up to present the wreaths. Fairhaven PBA number 184. The Fairhaven Board of Education. The Fairhaven First Aid Squad. The Fairhaven Fire Company. The Fairhaven Fire Police. The Fairhaven Auxiliary. The Fairhaven Historical Association. The Fairhaven Library. The Fairhaven Business Association. And the Fairhaven Borough Hall and governing body. Now I ask that we observe a moment of silence and personal reflection for all our veterans. Thank you. Before we close out the ceremony, it wouldn't be Fairhaven Veterans Day without closing things out with some remarks from our own Mr. Ray Taylor. Ray has spoken every Veterans Day when he wasn't deployed since 1949. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate all you did for me. That's all I want to do. I'm so glad to be here for one more year. And I appreciate every one of you. And I'm so glad to see so many veterans from each and every organization. And the kids couldn't live without them. Bless them all. This little town don't look to be much, but we got one hell of a kick when we won. And I belong to some of the organizations in and around the town. My good friend Joe, we stick together. All the fire companies, the clergies, and the schools. We give them a lot of credit for what they do for the kids. They don't know what you stand up for. And the kids is what makes the next generation. So when you see some young one walking, talking, don't get into the business, but let them know that you're there and you appreciate it. I wouldn't walk that street if I didn't have a little talk to somebody I'd never seen in my life. Because I want to be known. And I want to let the boys know that went over. When I say over, they know what I mean. They did one good job. And any one that cares to get any information from me about what I've seen during the different campaigns here and there, I'll be glad to talk to them. Let the world know what went on. You have got men around here that did so much for your country. People have come from all over the world to live in this country. And they should appreciate it. I have a son here now, and I wouldn't go nowhere without him.
Love you, Dad.
I had 7 children of my own, all graduated from Lumsden High School. Most of them own their own home. I have one grandson, he guards the president down there in Washington. He's with the Tobacco Firearms, and I appreciate him there. But I wouldn't let nobody talk against the country without having me offending the country. This is your world. This is your country. This is your town. And I want to thank the clergy in and around, well, no matter what. They do so much for the people of this community. I could stand here and talk for 50 minutes, but I'm not going to cut it off right here. Thank you, and we appreciate to the veterans living and the dead, and all those who have to do so much for this town. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ray. Again, I want to thank everyone for attending. You really make this day special, all of you. If you see a veteran throughout town, just as Ray says, be sure to thank them. And as Ray says, any of you young children, if you have any questions and you see Ray walking down River Road, please feel free to go up on and ask him a question. I'm sure you'll be entertained and amazed and informed. And as we do every year, I'll ask all the veterans in attendance to gather up front so we can take a picture for our website and hold that for immortality. And lastly, all veterans are invited back to Fisk Chapel at noon today, where a special Veterans Day meal will be served. Thank you all, and thank you for coming out.